Greetings, M squared here, and today we're going to talk about point-slope form. Now, point-slope form is a form of a linear equation where you have these x sub 1 and y sub 1. Remember, those are coordinates from a point. The subscripts just tell us that it's from point number 1. The m still stands for slope. This y and that x are still actually a y and an x. So m is the slope, x sub 1 is the coordinate of a point you have, y sub 1 is the y coordinate of the point, and x and y are the variables. You need to memorize that point-slope formula if you're in my class. And this is just kind of a way to show you how they got point-slope formula. They take the slope formula, m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, and they actually just go through, they substitute an x and a y for the sub 2 point, and then they multiply both sides by the denominator. Anyway, if you want to pause and stare at that for a while, it's kind of a cool process how they came up with the point-slope formula from the slope formula. So if you ever say, oh, I forgot to memorize it, you can always recreate it if you want to. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go over how to find out information about the line if you have it in point-slope form. So I'm going to ask you two questions. I'm going to ask you to look at the equation and tell me what the point is and tell me what the slope is. The slope's the easy one, right? So the slope is always going to be in front of the parentheses right there. The point is a little bit tricky because I want you to look at the formula. Your point would be x sub 1, y sub 1. That's your point. But when you look at this, it says x minus x sub 1, and it says y minus y sub 1. So the point that you see here is without that negative kind of. So you kind of have to look at the opposite. So that's the little bit tricky part because the formula has a minus sign in it, but you need to find out what the x sub 1 is. So here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my slope because that's the easy part. Y equals 1/2. M equals 1/2, the slope. And then I'm going to find my point. So I need a point. I need an x and a y and in parentheses with a comma in between. So make sure you have all that. And then I'm going to look right here. So next to the x is where I'm going to find my x coordinate. But remember, in order for that to be true, my formula says I had to have a minus sign. So how did I get the 2 if I had to have a minus sign? Well, I would need a negative 2 because an x minus a negative 2 would get me that positive 2. That's how I know that my x coordinate of that point must have been negative 2. So that's kind of the why, but you can just use a shortcut, which is whatever's in the parentheses, you're going to take the opposite of it. So if it says plus 2, you're going to do the negative 2. And the same thing over here. If it says minus 5, what are we going to do? We're going to say it's just 5 because my formula says that the y sub 1, that y coordinate comes after the minus sign. So if you remember that, now I'm going to go a little quicker and not explain that. We're just going to take the opposites of each point. So for example, this one. First I'll find my slope, which sits right in front of the parentheses when it's in point-slope form. That's negative 4. And then I'm going to find my point, and I take the x is always going to come first. What's in the parentheses with the x? So I'm going to do the opposite of that and the opposite of that. So when you look at an equation in point-slope form, the reason it's called point-slope form is because you can see a point and a slope right away. Just like in slope-intercept form, we can see the slope and the y-intercept. All right. So what you should do is pause and try to see if you can come up with the next one, and then check and see if you're right as I go through them. So here again, my slope sits right in front of the parentheses. That's going to be a negative 3. And the point is going to be the opposite of whatever this is, which is 7. And then notice there's not a number with the y. So that must mean it's 0 because it's the only thing I could subtract from y and get y. Y minus 0 is 0. We don't put y minus 0 because it's not considered simplified. All right, next one. What's my slope? Sits right there, 1/4. What's my point? Hopefully you said 8/1. All right, and over here, what do we get? What's the point? The opposite of minus 15, so it's 15 and the negative 22. And the slope sits right in front of that parenthesis, and that's negative 10. I'm going to leave the last one for you. So if you're in my class, you got to fill that out. But I bet you can figure it out. All right, good luck. M squared signing out.